There is a small country in Eastern Europe that just did what entire NATO divisions could not do with tanks and missiles. It strangled Russia's last stronghold on the continent, not with a single shot fired, not with a single soldier deployed, but with a signature on a piece of paper. And right now, as you watch this, the Kremlin is staring at the consequences in absolute disbelief. The country is Moldova. The move is historic, and the damage to Putin's empire in Eastern Europe may be irreversible. On April 8, 2026, Moldovan President Maia Sandu signed the law officially withdrawing the country from the Commonwealth of Independent States, the CIS, that post-Soviet club that Moscow has used for decades as an invisible leash to keep former Soviet republics in its orbit. With that single signature, Chisinau didn't just leave a political organization, it detonated a geopolitical bomb directly underneath Russia's most critical strategic artery in all of Eastern Europe.
To understand why this matters so deeply, you need to understand one word: Transnistria. Transnistria is a long, narrow strip of land wedged tightly between the Dniester River and Ukraine. It is not recognized by any United Nations member state. It has no seat at any international table. And yet, for Moscow, it has been absolutely priceless. For over 3 decades, this shadow region served as Putin's perfect blind spot in the heart of Europe, a dark corridor used to run farms, fuel instability across the Balkans, manipulate Moldovan domestic politics, and project fear across the Black Sea basin. It was untouchable. It was Russia's backyard within Europe itself. And at the center of it all, 1,500 Russian soldiers who had been stationed there since 1992, operating under the convenient cover of a so-called peacekeeping mission. Notice the word "were," because Moldova's CIS withdrawal just changed everything for those soldiers, overnight, without warning, without any diplomatic runway given to Moscow.
Here's what that legal move actually means on the ground. By exiting the CIS framework, Moldova severed every international legal bridge that Russia had been using to justify a military presence on Moldovan-controlled territory. Those 1,500 soldiers can no longer hide behind the peacekeeping mask. The mask has been ripped off. They are now, under every framework of international law, an illegal occupying force. Their presence is a crime, and there is nothing the Kremlin can legally say or do to change that. But Chisinau did not stop there. Moldova went a step further, a surgical step that cut even deeper. The Moldovan government officially declared the entire command echelon of the Russian operational group in Transnistria persona non grata on its territory. Think about what that actually means in practice. The Russian commanders who would receive orders from Moscow and relay them to troops on the ground can no longer physically enter Moldovan-controlled territory. The moment any of them shows up at a checkpoint, they will be detained and deported. The chain of command between the Kremlin and its trapped soldiers has been severed at the neck. So what happens to those 1,500 soldiers now? The answer reveals one of the most humiliating logistical disasters in modern Russian military history. These men are completely sealed in. Ukraine has already shut its borders to any Russian military movement from the east. Moldova has now sealed the western corridors. There is no land route in or out. The airspace over Moldova is not available to Russian military transport. Not a single new soldier can be rotated in. Not a single bullet can be resupplied. Not a single liter of fuel. Not even basic provisions through civilian channels, because Moldovan border guards are running airtight checks at every crossing point. And here's the part that makes this even more extraordinary. The vast majority of these so-called elite Russian soldiers have never even set foot in Russia. Most are locals, men from Transnistria who were simply handed Russian passports and enrolled into a military unit Moscow could claim on paper. Moscow has now condemned these people to complete isolation and slow starvation. They are supposedly an elite detachment of one of the world's largest armies, and they cannot even board a civilian flight to escape. The Kremlin's reaction made it crystal clear just how much this move has rattled them. Sergei Shoigu, secretary of the Russian Security Council, went public with a series of furious threats. He accused Moldova of deliberately squeezing Russian forces. He warned that Russia would use all necessary methods to protect its citizens. He implied military intervention was not off the table. But Ukraine's military intelligence chief Kirilo Budanov dismantled those threats in a single sentence. Russia's contingent there, he said plainly, is too weak, and reinforcing it is now physically impossible. Russia is making threats it has no operational capacity to carry out.
the largest army in Europe by its own claim, is incapable of rescuing 1,500 soldiers trapped in a sliver of land the size of a small county. Now here is where the story gets even darker and far more dangerous. Beneath those soldiers' feet sits something that has kept European security analysts awake for decades. It is called the Cobasna Ammunition Depot. This is not a military warehouse. This is Eastern Europe's single largest stockpile of Cold War weaponry, buried in Transnistria since the collapse of the Soviet Union. The numbers are staggering. Approximately 20,000 tons of heavy ammunition, hundreds of thousands of artillery shells, massive quantities of tank ammunition, millions of rounds of small arms cartridges. All of it accumulated when the Soviet 14th Army withdrew from East Germany and Czechoslovakia at the end of the Cold War.
For years, international inspectors from the OSCE have been turned away from this facility at gunpoint. Nobody has been allowed anywhere near it, and 57% of all the ammunition inside has already passed its safe shelf life. It sits in the dark, aging, deteriorating, in the heart of a politically unstable region, a powder keg without a controlled detonator. Now, with Moldova's CIS exit, Russia has lost even its last legal pretext for keeping soldiers there to guard it. Chisinau now holds a powerful trump card. It can invite international organizations in, force a full accounting, and use the depot's status as leverage to demand Russia's complete removal from the region. That ticking time bomb has become a diplomatic weapon in Moldova's hands, aimed directly at Moscow. But this is not only a military crisis for Russia, it is a civilizational turning point for Moldova itself. For the first time in decades, the suffocating shadow of Russian pressure has been lifted from the country's political future. Despite relentless energy blackmail, Moscow repeatedly threatening to cut natural gas supplies, the Sandu government refused to bend. Instead, Moldova integrated into Europe's energy grid, making Russian gas leverage irrelevant. Despite threats from Minsk, despite hybrid warfare tactics, despite everything the Kremlin threw at it, Moldova did not take a single step back. And now it is sprinting forward. Moldova is currently the fastest progressing EU membership candidate in all of Europe. In the corridors of Brussels, officials no longer speak of Moldova as a buffer zone. They speak of it as a strategic pillar of the European family. And Chisinau has devised a chess grandmaster solution to one of the biggest obstacles on that path, Transnistria itself. The question has always been, how does Moldova join the EU when it has an illegal separatist region within its own internationally recognized borders? The Kremlin has spent years counting on that question to paralyze Moldova. The answer from Chisinau is elegant and devastating. Moldova will enter the EU with the right bank, the territory it actually controls, without waiting for Transnistria to be resolved. Russia's classic trap, solve your own internal problems first, then talk to us, has been completely bypassed.
Meanwhile, Transnistria is rotting. The free Russian gas that once funded its entire budget has been cut off by Ukraine. The Kuchurgan power plant, which generated electricity to sell back to Moldova, is now scraping by on coal. The young, educated population is racing to leave, fleeing to Romania, to the EU, anywhere away from a collapsing prison state. What remains in Tiraspol is a bankrupt, unplugged administration desperately looking toward Moscow for salvation and finding only silence. The European Union is funneling billions of euros into Moldova to make sure this transformation cannot be stopped or reversed, funding army modernization, cybersecurity infrastructure, energy independence, and institutional reform. Putin has run out of diplomatic cards. He is watching this Western integration unfold from afar with no tools left to stop it. But the blow that will keep Putin awake at night, the one that has the potential to fundamentally and permanently collapse his entire Eastern European strategy, is not any of the above. It is the unification file. Moldovan President Maya Sandu has publicly declared she would vote yes in a referendum on unification with Romania. Those words were not campaign noise. They triggered alarm bells from Washington to NATO headquarters in Brussels. Because a Moldova-Romania unification is not a policy shift, it is a continental redrawing of the map.
If it happens, the Prut River, that historic dividing line between the two countries, disappears. A shared language, a shared history, shared cultural DNA, and 3 decades of artificial separation would be consigned to the history books in a single democratic vote. What emerges is a new European state, larger, integrated, with multiplied military capacity, fully locked into NATO's southeastern flank. And those 1,500 Russian soldiers in Transnistria, they would wake up to find themselves not surrounded by Moldova's small army, but by the full, modern, overwhelming power of the NATO alliance. F-16s overhead instead of Soviet-era helicopters, Patriot systems along the border instead of outdated air defense, the most advanced radar networks on Earth monitoring their every move, second by second. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has already called the unification plan destructive. His panic is obvious, because Moscow has no political legitimacy left to oppose it and no military capacity left to prevent it. Even now, before any referendum, the integration between Moldova and Romania is happening in practice. New energy pipelines crossing the Prut, new bridges, modern highways, military coordination, commercial infrastructure. The de facto unification is being stitched together, quietly and unstoppably, one connection at a time. Russia's long shadow over Eastern Europe is being cut off by a wall it never saw coming, built on the Moldova-Romania axis, brick by brick, in plain sight. These are the days when history is being written, and not in Moscow's favor. The year 2026 is witnessing the irreversible collapse of one of Putin's last and most critical European strongholds. Moldova, a country that Russia once considered permanently locked in its orbit, has just demonstrated to every small nation in the region exactly what fearless, strategic resistance to a massive imperial power actually looks like. Transnistria is no longer a stronghold radiating fear. It is a burden, isolated, unfeedable, unsalvageable, and slowly rotting, a monument to the arrogance and miscalculation of Putin's imperial overreach.
The map of Europe is being redrawn before our eyes, and there is nothing Moscow can do to reverse it. So the question is yours. Do you believe a cornered and desperate Russia would risk one final suicidal military gamble to try to rescue its trapped soldiers in Transnistria? Or is Putin already staring at the inevitable, that the historic unification of Moldova and Romania would seal his definitive defeat in Eastern Europe forever? We want to hear what you think in the comments below. And if you want to take our content with you on the road, find us on Spotify, where TGN brings you these stories in audio form, ready for any journey.